Female Space Marines. The eternal topic rears its ugly Hydra head yet again, as it will continue to do until finally gatekeeping reach its desired point, where this simple combination of words will immediately result in your ejection from civilized society as a grievance mongerer and a troublemaker, as a political ideologue. But until then, there is still some value in bringing up the topic, particularly as this is a very valuable article. You see, we are not merely going to retread the old ground, where most of the arguments of the opposition can easily be dismissed by stating that either you don't know shit about 40k, or you are being blatantly disingenuous. Rather, instead, we are going to look at this because Alex Evans here gives something very valuable to the conversation. Honesty. As he writes at the end, and we'll go through the whole article to fully frame it, but he says, I am not asking for you to introduce female Space Marines. I do not care if you introduce female Space Marines or not. I am just asking you for you to take responsibility for their absence. Talk to your community about the subject, let us know you understand and care about the consternation it continues to generate. Let us know, above all, that when so-called 40k fans says things I don't agree with, that they do not speak with your voice, and that they, as you once claimed, will not be missed. See, this is why this fair article is worth looking at, because the mask isn't merely taken off, it is torn off and thrown away with joyous abandon. No, I'm not making an argument in the universe. I'm not making a lore argument. I'm not making a diversity, equity, or inclusion argument. I am simply stating, give my position special consideration and attack my opposition. That is all he demands. He demands that Games Workshop kowtow to his opinions and values, which we'll explore further on in the post. But see, the reason why this is so good is because normally the female Space Marine argument is of course a smokescreen. It is a cloak, it is a cover. This is what clever people do when they try to subvert your hobby, because it allows them to come into it and say, oh no, I'm not here to ruin it. No, I'm one of you. I just want 40k to be a bigger and more successful hobby. And to do that, we need the wider audience, the diverse audience, and female Space Marines would be a great way to do it, despite all of, the other female forces in the 41st millennium, like the entire female army, for example, but details. And indeed, there are even lore-accurate ways of doing it, they say. And then me and my side will have to counter-argue and say, no, we've actually seen this for quite a while. We know what your objectives are. You can't hide it with a smokescreen, but then we have to put forth the evidence. We have to go, okay, in this case, in this case, you said the same thing, and you didn't stop. You continued to levy yet further demands even after you got what you wanted. In fact, this is the entire history of your ideology, as we can determine by this, and this. It's actually quite a lot of work to debunk this. And so somebody coming forth from their side and blatantly saying, no, this is just a power grab, it's incredibly useful. Because from now on, I can literally just point to this and go, no, you're a disingenuous liar. And least you think I'm getting ahead of myself, we will read the article just to understand that he is firmly grounded in that ideology. Here we go. There will be some repetition of points because you know how these goes. There is something rotten in the state of Warhammer 40k. Even as Games Workshop's most successful creation continues to grow, recruiting new fans and breaking sales record left and right and center, it still suffers from an old wound that refuses to heal and reopens every few months to gout foul toxified blood once again. Yes, the female Space Marine argument. I know. You are the foul blood that keeps gushing forth. If you ever spent more than 5 minutes in one of 40k's online communities, especially within the last few months, you won't need me to tell you that its open festering wounds is gender. Yes, that is true. It didn't used to be an open festering wound, but you have most assuredly made it so. Specifically, it's manifested in the questions of whether Games Workshop should introduce female Space Marines into official 40k canon. A topic only one side cares about. A bit of background, during 40k's formative years, basically this is just saying the Space Marines are popular and that's why we want them. Today, after 36 years of self-reinforcing lore inertia and corporate risk aversion, Space Marines are still front and center of every major 40k product and they're still 100% men. Correct. Naturally, some fans already build their own female Space Marines at home. And more power to them. I don't care what sort of propaganda colours you paint yours in. It really doesn't affect me much. With third-party components and headcanon is forever. But in the official models, 140k books and 40k games, all Marines are male. Some folks want to change that, mostly so that female fans feel more represented. Actually, no, this is a straw man argument. There is no indication to suggest that if you were to change the Space Marines into women, that it would attract more women, because 40k is inherently not a setting that attracts female fans. And we have seen this in virtually every single other instance. Whenever you try to aim for the larger audience, you'll always get some, because you are now specifically catering to them. But creating female characters is not something that automatically attracts women. It is something that will automatically attract political ideologues, because that is the position you are actively surrendering to, but there is no evidence to suggest this. And if there truly was the case that women would flood to the hobby if only there was representation, again, Sisters of Battle, and the fact that the Space Marines are the only all-male army. Unless you count, I guess, the Tyranids, which might be all female or all male, or all both genders, considering certain forms like the Termagants, for example. Others really seriously don't want it changed, and they're oh so keen to make sure everyone knows it. Yes, because you keep making the demand. You keep going, hey, why don't we do this? And we keep going, no, this, and why? And then you go, why are you being aggressive? Because you're trying to ruin things. That's why. Living in these spaces every day, I admit I'm so tired of the whole damn business that mostly I just hope it'll go away. And that is why I elected to write a very long article on the topic. Liar. But then I remember two things. First, staying neutral is always a vote for the status quo, which currently is a cesspit of bilge. And second, when you turn your back on cesspits, unpleasant things start to grow from them. So it's time we had a little chat about this whole sorry situation, what's going on, why it sucks, why it matters, and what's to be done about it. In other words, you can't be still on a moving train, or you can't be stationary. And he will continue to further solidify his position in this regard. Before we get started, it's worth remarking, with some regret, how hesitant I was to even broach this subject in print. Oh, you sure as hell couldn't notice it. Not because it's not important or appropriate, mind you, politics, including gender politics, are everywhere. Everything is political. If you needed any further, just because you might have figured, okay, well, you're framing this guy's positions quite hard here, Arch. How do you know he's one of them? There you go. At the risk of stating the obvious, anyone who berates you for trying to insert politics into their hobby is either woefully uninformed, dogmatically ignorant, cynical, pushing their own politics under the guise of apolitical gatekeeping, oh, there you've got a good one, or else some combination of those three. Such people deserve your sympathy and support. And then it goes like underhanded thing. They're probably going through some stuff, but their views don't amount to a hill of beans. Actually, no, this is entirely incorrect. Everything is not political. Everything is not political as in everything has to do with our current day politics. It is entirely possible to have an item that means absolutely nothing. Now, you can project all your opinions onto it as you damn well please, but that doesn't matter, or as you put it, a hill of beans. You reading into a thing and then saying, oh, we need to learn this lesson, matters not worth a dog shit. Because everybody else just sees a fun game. And that is the reason why people used to do gaming, to avoid people like you, who go to the table and go, so, what about those elections, eh? Shut the fuck up. What about religion? No, shut the fuck up. That is the answer. That is the gatekeeping. It is shut the fuck up. I have my own political positions, obviously, and I am making my arguments from them specifically to get you to shut the fuck up. Because this is not an argument that we need to have in this hobby. No, I'd usually avoid it because it feels like constructive discussion on the matter has simply ground to an intractable halt. Yes, because you've long since ran out of arguments. In 2024, meaningful discourse about gender in 104k spaces had been almost entirely drowned out by the never-ending bad faith arguments about female Space Marines. It's been going on for years, it's exhausting, it's dispiriting, and it's so boring. And yet here we are. It's a shame, really. At one time, the debate around gender in Warhammer 40k were, if not drastically more intelligent and courteous, at least more varied. I remember explorations of gender roles among soldiers and civilians from all the weird and wonderful Warhammer 40k factions, and the imaginative diversity sci-fi allowed for in such things. And it still does. Again, the Space Marines are pretty much one of the only all-male factions. The Eldar have female guardians, they have female aspect warriors, where even the males present the female aspect. The Tau will throw anyone on the front line, they don't really care. The Orcs, they're literally non-binary, I'll actually adopt the far-left definition on that one. The Sisters of Battle are an all-female order militant. This still exists. This was never an issue. This was never a discussion. It was already in the universe, and so there was no pushback because he wasn't actually presenting anything that didn't make sense. We consider all the regular human psychology, including gender psychology that's buried deep inside Space Marines' heads, sublimated to their warlike programming, but still there, threaded through their personalities. We marked the apparent astartization tendency to ponder and discuss baseline human experiences and impulses supposedly expended from their brains: life, love, sex, and family. And we wondered where these transhuman men would be if they were ever allowed to lead a human life on their own. Well, they'd probably just be human, because the entire point of making them Space Marines is to make them something other than human. And so pondering what they would be like if they were human, well, they'd just be human. But as a Space Marine, they can't be human, because they're literally not. We wondered who the hell Slaanesh was, whether he was he or a she or a they, and why. It's a goddamn demon god. It really doesn't care. In this one case, pronouns really does not matter. Come to that, we wondered why Slaanesh was thought of as having a different gender from other Chaos gods at all. These were interesting, meaningful, nerdy questions. I don't know about that, but I'll let you have your fantasies. Now the chat is all female Space Marines, yes, no, all the time, and it blows. It's because all of those other things have already been discussed, and frankly, there's not a lot of interest about it. The female Space Marine argument is not interesting either, it is a political argument from A to Z. Some fans argue it'd be an easily acceptable new idea to fold into 40k's timeline. No, not a single fan argues that, but a lot of political ideologues do. Far from the weirdest thing in the setting, and would help move 40k away from feeling like it's still designed for 14-year-old boys. It is still designed for 14-year-old boys. Unquestionably so. It is okay for things to be aimed towards boys, even teenage boys, and 40k really quite obviously is. It is a warlike setting with heroic space knights that fight evil aliens. No, other fans say. That's stupid and wrong. Correct. Only boy children can survive the transformation into a Space Marine. It says so in an all lore text. Actually, it says so in every lore text ever, including one that was released literally last year. I don't own and have never read, but I'm sure I saw quoted somewhere. I feel like pulling back the background on the shelf of books I have, but it's like, oh, good argument, oh, negative argument, my opposition are all retards. Indeed. This is why I doubt you when you say that you used to have so many intelligent discussions on this, particularly as you are now an excellent example of throwing away all subtlety and just outright declaring your push for power. There are women in the other factions, why do you need to mess with the Space Marines then anyway? If you're bothered about representation, why don't you go play Sisters Battle? They're women, aren't they? Yes. Tell an AI to generate 30 slightly different worded versions of that exact exchange, then post them online in a continuous loop for years, and you'll create something remarkably close to what 40k spaces are like at the moment. Because they're the good arguments. Truth does not change just because you've heard it multiple times. It's true that between 40k, its Fantasy Twin Age of Sigmar, and their respective spin-offs, Warhammer actually has a hell of a lot more great female characters and miniatures these days than it had in 1987, and some respectable LGBTQ representation too. Modern 40k feels notably less for straight male gaze, and all the better for it. Yes, you can't have this thing, because it's ours. No, only men. For some, though, progress in those other areas of the hobby only accentuates the fact that girls are still not allowed in Space Marine Treehouse. Exactly. That is your point of view. Wait, so we've given you all of these things, and oh boy, is this not the perfect representation of what I said? Well, you'll stop when you get female Space Marines, right? Yeah. And there you go. No, regardless of the representation they get, it is never enough because the entire ideology is based on progressive demands. You can never reach the goal of inclusion because if you do so, you will no longer have any further power grabs to make. After decades of missed opportunities for GW to update the made-up rules of its fictional world and then let them in. They're made-up rules. And again, this is how I know that you are not a 40k fan. Personally, like I said, I don't care that much either way. Thank you for reinforcing the point. I'm not very interested in arguing for or against female Space Marines. They're a relatively minor discussion point in a bigger conversation about inclusive representation in our hobby. Off goes the mask. I don't care about female Space Marines, I care about my real-life politics. On the long list of Warhammer priorities, I'd say they're much less pressing than things like making sure LGBT people feel safe at community events. They're safe at community events. They simply are. Their feelings is not relevant in the matter. They are as safe as anybody else is. So you may well ask, why are we several hundred words into an article about them? Because you are making a disingenuous point about inserting your politics. That's why. It's those guys again. And this is basically the port where he goes, there are schnazis in my hobby, and I call everyone I disagree with schnazi. But in order to present his position as faithfully as possible, let's go through it. Female Space Marines aren't inherently a very big deal, but in my estimation, they've been made into a battleground issue by the behavior, motivation, and sheer fury of the people rallying against them. Correct. You know why? It is because this is the poster boy. This is the one thing that remains only for men. This is the one thing that is only male representation that you have no in. This is our thing. And we know for a damn well fact that if you get this, you will have taken over the poster boy. You will have made Games Workshop surrender on their single most important point of marketing. After this, there is no barrier you cannot cross. This is the greatest single demand. And that is why we are pushing back. If they surrender on this, it is a complete surrender to the DEI agenda. It is a political surrender. And there is no recovery from it, as we have seen in, for example, Star Wars. Because you and I both know what happens when fans of a fictional thing start shaping dangerous notions about upping it to make it friendlier to more groups of people. Those guys are going to start turning up. Again, you've already admitted that you don't care about the topic. You've already admitted that you are caring about this from a political point of view about DEI, a value held solely by one fringe group on the far left. You don't get to say, oh, I'm just having a neutral conversation, when you are the fascist in the room saying, no, it is my way or the highway. Using words like inclusivity, representation, or gender draws them to you like hungry carrion birds to a fresh corpse. Yes, because they are the signals of somebody going, I don't care about the setting, it's made up. Oh, but by the way, we need to change things. Whenever real people are trying to be kind to other people at the cost of amending or even simply criticizing some elements of a shared imaginary world, they sense an opportunity for performative outrage. You keep making this worse for yourself. You keep going like, I don't care about my opposition. They're not human. They're not real people. And this universe they care about doesn't matter. Obviously, this is a logical fallacy and yet another case of, well, just simple bad faith. Simple as. It's like, oh, this thing doesn't matter. Okay, well, stop talking about it. No, I must talk about it because it matters. It is just a tactic to try to make you shut up by going, oh, it doesn't matter, so that they can do whatever they want with it, because obviously enough, it does. Simple human compassion, blah blah blah, my side good, your side evil, yada yada yada. Ad hominem, ad hominem, ad hominem. Who are they? For the most part, it seems conservative-minded men and boys. Apparently angry, ad hominem, ad hominem. Listen, this entire article could pretty much be boiled down to ad hominem, bad faith argument, ad hominem, give me my stuff. That men's privileged status in the social and cultural system is being eroded, who have constructed a personal identity and proposed around their favorite manly hobbies. My dude, identity is all you have, as yet again exemplified by these three values. These are not people. These are attributes over which you have no power. These are not what makes you the person you are. Your gender, your genitalia is not you as a person. They're right, but more importantly, they're wrong. Let's be clear. When those guys tell you there aren't any female Space Marines, they're absolutely correct. There aren't any. Not one. GW accidentally, passively set a precedent shortly before I was born, 1992 if you want to know. The social world changed around it, and now it is up an inclusivity tree without a gene crafting paddle. Female Space Marines that exist, 0. The cracks start showing when they have to argue why there shouldn't be. No, they don't. When you call upon them to show not merely that case A is true now, but that case A must always be true, and that alternatives are definitely worse, probably impossible, and for a bonus point, immoral. Oh, that's easy enough. In fact, I can do all of those. Probably impossible? We've been told it's impossible, by the God Emperor himself. And if the Big E couldn't do it, even with all of his additive help that we've learned about in the Horus Heresy, it's probably impossible. As for definitely worse, it would be an enormous drain on the Imperium resources to try and do this probably impossible thing. Especially as Gene Seed then is the single most valuable resource in the entire Imperium, wasting unfathomable quantities on it simply to include, well, literally to have inclusion and diversity and equity, 21st century ideals in the 41st millennium is an incredibly bad idea. And it would definitely be worse, because now you're wasting this unfathomably valuable resource on what would be objectively inferior soldiers. And as for bonus points, immoral, it would be immoral because it would do clear and honest damage to the series. All storytelling is a rhetorical argument. You need to put the player in the world, show him the rules and the regulations and go, this is the universe. This is how you allow people to accept the world, to get into it, to get immersed, and to really go like, oh yeah, this is cool, I can really immerse myself in this. And when you fail that rhetorical argument by saying, oh yes, the Imperium is going to spend the single most valuable resource in the entire Imperium on objectively inferior soldiers, even as it is on the brink of annihilation, now ever more so than ever, people will go, hold on a second, why? Why would they use this on women? Why wouldn't they go for the best stock? It's not like a lack of recruits is the problem, gene seed is the issue. And if the Space Marines really are the thin shield, the tiny thing that keeps humanity just a scotch away from the cliff, why the hell would they do this? They wouldn't. That is why it is immoral, because it makes the setting observably and clearly worse. And here's the thing too, this is not a moral judgment against women, it is a logical one. It is an observation of reality. The evidence base on which they must build those ironclad cases against change, a 36-year-old crazy paving patchwork of science fiction stories and blurbs from the back of model kit boxes with only marginally more internal consistency than the Bible. Actually, no, the internal consistency of 40k has been pretty solid, especially on this topic. You go like, it's not internally consistent. Then why have 4 Games Workshop repeated again and again for 36 years that only men can be Space Marines? You are making an argument against internal consistency. Again, you are the one here that is saying that we should just disregard the rhetoric of the story. If there exists a rigorous critical argument explaining why all adopted studies must always have exclusively male sex typology and gender characteristics, and more importantly, why this particular red line of in-universe lore is so fantastically important that it's worth alienating half the planet and venomously abusing strangers online to defend, then I confess I've yet to encounter it. Or you've encountered it dozens of times. You have just simply chosen to close your eyes to it, as we will demonstrate in a moment. Much more common in my experience are fallacious creeds against a poorly defined wokeism that ironically seem far more interested in hawking real-world political theories than they are in a serious discussion about Warhammer 40k itself. No. I can clearly define wokeism. It is approaching everything through the lens of intersectionality. Simple as. That is the definition of wokeism. It is a hard and fast and clear definition of wokeism that turns it into the teachings of Kimberly Crenshaw's intersectionality, which literally turns everything into a laundry list of grievances, as that is the entire purpose of the ideology. You yourself probably don't know what intersectionality is. You probably don't know who Kimberly Crenshaw is. You probably have no idea what the doctrines of the thing you are professing to fight for are, because you are a sheep. You are a midwit. You are someone who is a useful idiot. You are arguing for these things without understanding where they lead or what they mean. That is why you cannot make an argument for it, but rather need to go, "Oh, the opposition is making really dumb ones." None of these rhetorical tactics or rancid vibes are new. The same ramshackable reactionary movement steeped in an in-group, out-group social pressure and masculine identity politics. Again, you are using your language, identity politics. The argument against female Space Marines has nothing to do with identity politics. It has to do with the rhetorical argument of storytelling. You have no idea what any of this means. It's been at work in our culture for well over a decade. It has, but not in the way you think it has. It weaponizes people's feelings of powerlessness, disenfranchisement, and digital isolation. You are literally describing your own position by granting identity markers over which you have no power with innate totemic power, by saying, "Why are we going to do this?" Well, it's because gender. Why is gender important? Because I've given it totemic power. Why is diversity important? Because I've imbued that with totemic power. This is what you are doing. Oh, well, they're disenfranchised. They're not getting representation. Therefore, we must give it to them. It's been a driving force behind Gamergate and the alt-right and the Trump presidency, all of which are reactions to you. See, you're even contradicting yourself. These are reactionary movements. Or what are they reacting to, precisely? Very much alive in Warhammer video games and through Western public life. Of course, 40k has been dealing with far-right foxes inside the henhouse for many years, simply because the hellish, bloodthirsty, xenophobic, totalitarian dystopia that is the setting central faction, the Imperium of Man, is practically tailor-made to give teenage fascists a hard-on. Yes, it is inherently conservative and right-wing, that is correct. But fascism is a left-wing ideology, so incorrect in that one. For every 1,000 fans, 999 appreciate the grotesque multi-level parody of 40k's appealing dark fantasy world, appalling, and one becomes enamored with it at face value, despising our bland egalitarian neoliberal reality and longing for a big, strong, gold-armed daddy to tell them what to do. Genuinely, it's unsettling the adoration these people have for someone as abhorrent as the Emperor of Mankind. The Emperor of Mankind did nothing wrong, because within the 41st millennium, the Chaos Gods are infinitely worse than a dictator. Which you'd know if you cared about the setting instead of your real-life politics, but details. That's only 1 in 1,000, but a 0.1% of a fandom as big as Warhammer 40k makes for a sizable extremist fringe. As 40k sales climb and influxes of new hobbyists join the games community, the club keeps getting bigger and more diverse, which causes the fringe to become more frantic and militant in its desperate, misguided Gatekeep mission and to female Space Marines and its favorite subject. And this is where we come to my good old friend Sargon, which simply says that Space Marines are representation for men and not women, which drove this person up the wall because, well, hold on, that's true, and that's my weaponization. Like news, or bowel movements, this stuff goes through cycles. The discourse on female Space Marines tends to hit a rolling boil for a month or so, then die away for a couple of months in favor of more interesting topics, before inevitably bubbling to the surface again. And recent waves of female Space Marine posting have me worried that usual because of the attention they're attracting. You see, recently I noticed alt-right YouTube influencer Carl Benjamin, aka Sargon of Akkad, weighing on the subject. Sargon is not alright, in the same way that you are probably a fascist. It isn't the first time, mind. Benjamin says he's been in 40k for about 30 years, and I totally believe him. I hate to say it, but his Magnus the Red paint job is pretty rad. It is. It's generally great. Sargon is an amazing painter. From what I can tell, though, most of his online presence these days focus on fear-mongering about immigration taking over England. Oh yes, fear-mongering indeed. Blah 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 blah. But over the holiday breaks, he still found time in his busy schedule for several tweets about why one particular type of toy soldiers can't be girls. Because in his opinion, not his opinion, in the opinion of GW, Space Marines are representation for men and not for women. True. Curious, you might think that a supposedly far-right talking head, a respected podcast host, would A, apparently care about gender representation in fiction, or B, spends his valuable time opining publicly about the gender politics of a miniature wargame, even one he loves with all his heart. Really? You are writing a 1,000-word article on something. Why do you care then? Again, it's the appeal to irrelevancy. As for this, apparently care about gender representation in fiction because he knows it pisses you off. That's why he does it. because he knows that this causes you to go off the wall, to give him attention. You've fallen for it hook, line and sinker. He did that literally for Twitter clout. Now, he means it, absolutely, don't get me wrong, but he worded it in such a way to rile you up. And in that respect, Sargon is a master. Active political figures of all stripes are perfectly allowed to like Warhammer 40k. The UK Home Secretary and Conservative Party MP James Cleveland is an avowed fan, for instance. But oddly enough, public-facing political operators don't often openly participate in online arguments over Warhammer lore, suspecting perhaps that it might lead to people to think themselves superficial, unserious, or naive. No. I'm sure a dude in a suit might think so, but Sargon's not a dude in a suit. He is of the public. He is a fan, and he only got into politics because he saw his spaces under attack. Same for me. Old Carl has no such concerns though. He's happy to join us nerds at the toy soldiers table, but not, I think, because he's superficial, unserious, or naive. No, it seems to me he's caught the whiff of potential in the air. The Warhammer 40k community is going through another phase of growing pains, and it could become an increasingly fertile recruiting ground for anti-woke, alt-right acolytes if they can properly cultivate it. My dude, if what you're saying is correct, it already is. The problem with having the position of 40k is overrun with fascists and 40k might be overrun with fascists is that you can't have your cake and eat it too. Carl Benjamin is merely talking to people who are in the hobby and have been here for as long as he has. He's been here for 30 odd years. I have entire shelves of 40k books in my collection, and I've made God only knows how many thousands of hours of content around it. This, above all, is what's putting a bee in my proverbial bonnet. Oh god, we've finally arrived at it. In principle, I completely understand Games Workshop's desire to feign ignorance on the female spaceman in question. Leave the mess to sort itself out in the wider 40k community. Free market of ideas and avoid alienating any customers. It's cowardly, but it's commercially prudent. In practice, it's resulted in a permanent toxic stifling stalemate in which one side, Sargon and pals, can leverage the implied support of the IP owner purely because they're defending the status quo. Again, I don't care whether or not they prevent female spacemen becoming a thing, that's not important. What is important is that this vacuum of authority could give Warhammer 40k's Gamergate a free run at flogging all the political ideas to incoming generations of fans. I don't know how to tell you this, but we're already in. We're already in on the inside. We've already been here this entire time, and we're just now trying to get you back out again. The longer GW refuses to comment, the longer the self-described anti-woke crowd conspiracy claim female space marines are leftist propaganda being forced down the throats of ordinary right-thinking Warhammer fans. Are you listening to yourself? The longer those claims go unchallenged by GW, the more new joiners to the hobby will be entering a Warhammer community twisted and malformed by alt-right ideology. And the tragedy is, Warhammer 40k didn't start out like this, it got sick over time. And now we get to the "but don't you know about Rogue Trader" part of the argument. Again, it's about as formulaic as it gets, but let's go back to the previous point, right? So, Games Workshop is silent, that's the problem. They just need to make a statement. They have. They made a statement 36 years ago, only men can be Space Marines. And then they kept saying that for 36 years. There has never been an exception to the rule. Just, last year? They made an announcement in the Horus Heresy again, only men can be Space Marines. In the Rogue Trader video game, only men can be Space Marines. There is no silence here. There is only you not liking the answer for your clearly stated political reasons. Your entire argument here is, I don't like my political opposition, we must keep them out because of my ideology, and thus Games Workshop must take my position. See, this is the thing that you've completely not gathered up here. The reason why people use female Space Marines, as I started the video with, is as a smokescreen. It is to go, these are my concerns and they are legitimate within the hobby, whereas you are simply saying, power play. Yes. Which I do appreciate, and thank you very much for it. It'll be a fantastic article to refer to for the next, 10 years or so. But nevertheless, how did it come to this? Blah blah blah, 40k satire. I don't even need to read any of this. I know all of these arguments. It's a satire of 40k fascism, and the fascists are taking it seriously. Oh, those silly fascists. No. the 40K, if it was intended as a English satire of 40K, was an English again of fascism, it was an incredibly poor one. The Imperium is not fascist. The mere existence of the Mechanicus makes it clear that it is not fascist because it is not an all-controlling empire. Furthermore, I even think he mentions that it was theocratic fascism. I think it was somewhere in here. I read this whole thing at some point, that it was theocratic fascism, which is a definition that defeats itself because you cannot have theocratic fascism. The definition of fascism is the state above all. You cannot then go, but God, above the state. If you have two supreme entities, you don't have theocracy and you don't have fascism. And theocracy functions a lot better in the 40K universe. In fact, it's more along the lines of theocratic oligarchy, rather than either one of those, but I doubt you know the meaning of either of those words. So what should we do about it? In recent years, GW has made some limited but welcome public statements in an effort to align itself against bigoted or intolerant fans under the banner phrase, Warhammer is for everyone. Ah yes, we finally arrive at the point where I get to say that before you got in the hobby, there was no sign on the door. Nobody was excluded from 40K. There was no sign saying no blacks or Latinos or dogs allowed. Anyone with a sufficiently fat wallet was welcome into the hobby. Women, gays, transgenders, blacks, anything and everything. We didn't care about the color of your skin, we didn't care about your genitalia, none of this was relevant. And in fact, when a woman deigned to enter the hobby store, holy shit. The issue of the queen bee problem emerged not because people hated women, it was because they couldn't stop fawning over them. Oh my god, a female that likes the thing I do? What is this, a dream? But then the progressives got in power, and suddenly it was, if you don't agree, you will not be missed. And this is still heralded as the greatest achievements of progressivism: exclusion. But a brief channel through 40K Twitter, YouTube, Reddit and Discord community is enough to demonstrate just how far there is still to go before it can turn that mission statement into practical reality. Any suggestion that the envelope of 140K products, media or events be widened in any way to better accommodate and affirm non-white straight cis male fans can confidently expect a wave of downwards mockery and derision, and that's if you're lucky. Because these are markers of your political intent. That's why. If you simply say, everyone welcome, then everyone is welcome. If you say, hey, we don't like the cis-het wild heteronormative patriarchy, but we prefer LGBTQ elements, you've now made your political position clear. And obviously then the people who feel alienated by you making an obvious political statement are gonna go, stop being fucking fascists and just let anyone and everyone play your goddamn game. But here's my plea. Games Workshop, you have to do more too. You don't just get to be neutral, non-committal, catch-all corporation anymore, you need to be more responsible than that. One single black and white social media statement every 3 years isn't going to cut it anymore. Business is booming. The Warhammer 40K 10th edition launch landed, you recorded monthly sales and a long record monthlies, and you're finally going to get your own proper TV and movies with Henry Cavill. They've actually had movies before, but they've all been shit. Well, one, and several other in planning, but again, you wouldn't know about that. In the next 3 years, our Warhammer 40K community could get inordinately bigger. It is your responsibility to help protect that growing community from being dragged into the mud by bad actors. Oh, I agree. Who not only don't get 40K, but want to dictate their gross perverted visions of it to everyone else. Oh, we could not be in more agreement, sir. We could not. We are one mind, you and I, just in different directions. And that brings us to the end at long goddamn last. And this is yet another perfect example of the fact that you cannot satisfy the beast. There is no amount of surrender that will ever be enough. The female Space Marines will not be enough. A statement saying we vow leftism, we surrender to progressivism will not be enough. Because this is as close to that as you are going to get. Warhammer is for everyone, diversity, equity, inclusion, specific references to your political ideology. If you don't agree, you will not be missed. This is pretty damn close to a yes, we avow the left, purely and only the left statement. And it's not good enough. Because then you go 3 years later, oh, you need to make another one. You need to surrender harder. And then they surrender harder. Harder. There is no point at which the beast will ever be satisfied. The crocodile will always come about for another bite because that is its nature. It wishes power, and that is all it wants. It doesn't care about its demands. They are a means to an end. That is why they never cease. But again, it's a very valuable thing to see here, a complete and utter mask-off moment where simply just the cynical power grab is displayed for what it is. At no point in this entire article does Alex here make a single argument for anything. He doesn't argue why his position is good, he doesn't argue why it's healthy, he doesn't argue why it should be done so. He simply goes out to outline his progressive position and saying, bad right-wingers, bad conservatives, everyone who disagrees, bad, 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 and then ends by saying, I'm the good guy. And you should say so, GW. In fact, I demand you say so. Otherwise, I'm going to call you bigots and fascists again. I'm sorry to say this, Alex, but this is not a battlefield that you are at all prepared to step into. And you should probably go back to those message boards that you've seen, where you claim to have seen all these conversations, and actually read them instead. And you might pick up a thing or two. But until you do that, well, thank you very much for the example. I will be having an absolute field day with this for a very long time, as you have managed to incriminate your entire political position as nothing more than power-mad bigots. Thank you. Until next time, I have been Arch, and if you've somehow survived all the way until the end, thank you as well. I know, it's a very lengthy thing just to go over the same non-arguments again, but I like to be at least honest to my opposition and demonstrate in full that, yeah, they're actually still retarded. Have a good day.